You're live. All right, welcome. This is a meeting of Council Rock School District's Facilities Committee meeting, January 5th, 2017. In the interest of time, because I know Doug's got a lot of stuff to go on, my name is Mike Forward. I'm school director. The other school directors I have with us are Kyle McKessie, Ed Tate, Denise Brooks, Andy Block, and Mark Bialik. We've got Doug Taylor, our facilities administrator, and Jerry Grout, school director. Dr. Robert Frazier and Matt Frederickson from the administration team. We've collected all the public names and we'll have them in for the record. So with that, Doug, have that.
Thank you. Happy New Year. I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. I know we have a 7:30 meeting as well. So my last item rolls right into that meeting. Energy management update, facilities improvement, brief update on the projects, our capital improvement projects update, security team update, board agenda items, master capital planning is last, and public comments. So with energy management, just a brief update. Again, we are usually a month or two or three behind because of the way the utility bills come in and aramark's ability to prepare the analysis from that information. So our baseline energy score was an 80. Our current energy star score is an 81. Energy intensity is slightly up, but the big picture is our gross square foot cost is at 95 cents a square foot, down from the 97 cents it was a few months back. And as always, there is an adjustment based on weather, so they are adjusted accordingly. Some other things relative to energy, our retro commissioning efforts are ongoing. We talked about Goodnow a while back, and we had some issues with the controls there. We had a big team meeting with Siemens, who is the building management system manufacturer. The representatives were there. The majority of those issues have been corrected. That building is starting to right itself. So from an energy performance standpoint, we're starting to see improvements in that building. So each month, we should see improvement. It's always the last 12 months as we look at that. So each month it will start to improve. Holland Elementary School was the other building we had some challenges with. We had Johnson Control, the building management system manufacturer, representatives there with us, and made some strides to get that building performing better. Also talked about some lighting control issues and some adjustments to the systems beyond what was already installed. So we're going to follow up on that later. Energy Star applications were submitted to EPA. It's been a while since the district has been recognized for Energy Star. There was a time when each year there was recognition for our district, back when in the heyday when we really got started with this process. So we submitted several schools to EPA, excluding several because we had some gas meter issues that have since then been resolved, and energy usage issues. The controls talked about Goodnow and Holland, and North is the other building that we're writing the ship on as well. So with that, we have received Energy Star recognition for a handful of our schools, and including this facility as well, which is a good thing, a nice thing. We did receive nice decals with the year that we can put in the front window of each of those facilities to show the community that we are performing well and saving money at the same time. So what it means basically is that we're consuming 35% less energy and contribute 35% fewer greenhouse gas emissions than our peers, which is a great thing. And that we're outperforming 75% of similar facilities across the country. So that's something to be proud of. And the biggest thing is, years ago we were $2 a square foot for electric, and now we're 90, 94, 95 cents. So we're going to continue to work hard to keep it at a low level and find other ways to increase our savings. Facilities improvement project update. Just to give you a brief update on where we are with all of the approvals. At one point, there were all sorts of things hanging out there. We have it down to a handful of things. The financial security agreements have been finalized, have been sent off, so we should be in good shape with that. We are waiting for the land development agreement still from Brookhampton Township. That is in their solicitor's hands. We still do not have it. East Vernon Gray has been working and asking for that. I've also asked the township to help me get that. Having said that, we do have the building permits in hand. All of that's been resolved. So we're just waiting for the formal document to come to us. And both projects are on schedule and doing well. Another update, as you recall, we have the ACE grant, Alternative and Clean Energy grant for both these projects. So to go green gold on each of these facilities, we're receiving $2 million for that. To date, we have received for Holland Middle School $790,000 and for Newtown $435,000. Once we reach the $2 million mark on each project, the monies will stop coming, but they pay on a percentage of actual pay applications that come in from construction. Newtown Middle School is actually ahead of schedule. We have foundations in ahead of where we planned. Structural steel continues to be erected on site, and we're looking good. We're not looking for a building until May of 18, but you're starting to see pieces of building come out of the ground pretty quickly. Just a couple quick shots. This is the second floor looking down what will be a corridor with classrooms on each side, kind of in each shot. You can see the steel, metal studs. The roof is actually being installed on a section of the building. Columns still going up. Enclosure at a certain area with temporary heat so the guys can actually work inside where they're actually building partitions and working away, creating a building. That will be our cafeteria down the road and serving area. You can go to our website and find more photos of these projects. I'm just giving you a couple quick photos so you can see what's happening. The good news is we occupied the first classroom phase at Holland Middle School right after the new year on the 3rd. It was a seamless transition. Kids left the old space before the holiday break, came back, and rolled right into those new classroom spaces after the holidays. So, a lot of credit to Rich Hollahan and the staff at Holland and our maintenance team for moving all that furniture between the holiday breaks. Really nice, successful move. And so this is the piece.
The classrooms look amazing. I mean, it really is. Those kids should have been really happy with what they moved into.
I was there the day they came, and I watched the first kids walk down the hallway and see their smiles on their faces. It was just made all this worth it. It really is neat to see. And the staff is equally as happy, which is nice to see. This is the piece we just finished. We're working on classroom additions on the bottom, and this is where we're moving next. It's a mirror image of the piece on the opposite side. So this summer, the other half of it finished. Same thing with the second floor. That's the area of the building that we're working on. Second floor, first floor, and outside. So as you recall, we had metal siding around this building with no daylight whatsoever. That has come off. We've constructed brick veneer, window systems, daylight into the classrooms, and sunscreens for as a green feature as well. So this is the new steel going up at the new administrative office entry off of East Holland Road. That's the new classroom addition off the back side. It's a shot of one of the new science labs and with stuff in it. One of the new corridors, one of the things we'll do is put all the new terrazzo floors down when that entire half of the building is finished. I'll come in and place all those floors throughout those hallways. And a new classroom, which is wonderful to see the natural light, to see beyond the dark hallways that they have. So the next item is the Holland Middle School name change. There's been a lot of discussion about, with the moving of Richboro and Holland, combining the two, what does that school want to be? What's the name want to be? So we engaged Barry Desco led the charge and engaged the student leadership team and PTOs from the sending schools to assist in coming up with some names, some options. So those schools included Holland Middle School, Richboro Middle School, Churchville, Hillcrest, Hollandale, Welsh, Richboro, Rolling Hills. So there was a strong consensus, and the favorite selection from that group was Northampton Middle School. So,
I saw your memo on that, and that's something I guess we can discuss. I have a concern with that, and that's my only concern is that, one, it forever labels that school as a school serving Northampton, when redistricting may later change it. And I understand the other was called Newtown. Historically, it was called Newtown because the building was the Newtown High School. It was before Wisconsin Rock. So, I always worry about naming them after the place because, one, it may be confusing because there is another Northampton County and there's other places that gets a little confusing. But I'm also, we also haven't entertained any, I don't know that we pursued it, we haven't, the naming rights that someone might wish to name it after someone. We haven't campaigned or solicited, have we? I don't know that we've had an active.
We're out of time.
We're out of time? Well,
Correct?
I think we asked before, and I don't know that we got the places that the name has to be installed. Meaning, I don't know that we're out of time. If it's using a hammer drill to install bolts that hold up a name on the outside of the building, then we're not out of time because that can be done retrospectively. If you're interested in laying it in a terrazzo floor, we're still not out of time, and that's not something which I think is a wise investment of taxpayer money. So I know. My point being, I want to know where the names have to be that we're out of time. Where does it have to be written, literally in stone, that we're out of time? Okay.
it's more so procuring materials so if you're the contractor and you have aluminum letters that go in a building, or you have logos in the building.
That's what I'm looking
those
for.
Materials
I'm looking to know what those are.
Well, we can put an inventory together, but it's bigger than just that. It's also the school, the clothing, the uniforms, all those things that make us Richboro, Holland now are going to become something different. So they need time to actually go out and deal with all. And Barry can speak better to those things than I.
Well, I think it's also part of the culture and how you consolidate those schools. I kind of sympathize with you saying, hey, if we redistrict to the point where you've got kids coming from outside, that community might not feel great about the name, but I think the sooner we land on the name, the better to ensure that we get a really smooth transition.
I don't disagree, but the names mean so little now, and they're a lost opportunity for education. There's no feeling for anything historical. This is an area that's rich with history, and we don't, and that's a missed opportunity. So I may be the lone wolf singing on this one, but I just, I respect that they want to name it that. The question is it the durable name? And it doesn't really reflect what the district is doing. I mean, we just have assumed going forward, I guess, that Newtown will continue to be Newtown. And we haven't discussed that. We've never discussed whether it would or would not be. Just always worked forward on the assumption it wouldn't be. I don't know.
Since we're talking about it, it's a missed opportunity to explore some revenue, even if it's obviously one-time revenue. But I had a conversation several months ago with some people in the naming committee at Bucks County Community College to get an idea of what they're getting for special areas or buildings. And it's a large number, it really is. So even if we decide not to do it, that's fine. But if we could bring the district in X number of dollars, we should at least have a discussion about it. And I don't think we've really had a discussion about it, very preliminarily. But,
and that building at Bucks County Community College is not named after me. There's a building now that's named after Jane Grubb.
is that right? Okay, good.
Look, what it would mean is, the contractors would hold on ordering, anything relative to those names, signage, whatever it may be. Manufacturers will have enough charge to order it the next year whatever those costs are would be offset by whatever monies you may raise. How that, I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the stuff, you know, the uniforms, all the other things that would be affected. I can only speak to the building itself. So, you know, if the board feels that a naming committee should be put together, you know, I don't know, that's not something
Well, I think that Wendy had talked about leading
She did.
that before. So she's not here, so I think we should give her the courtesy of letting her, defer, and maybe we can get some follow-up information about the other things we talked about.
Well, I was premature. You introduced the concept going forward, but we didn't speak to a date when it needed to be approved, so that may have been.
No, I've been saying that it needs to be resolved.
I was going to say, in
by the-
fairness to Doug, and it's because of the way these meetings operate, I'm sure, but I would say I can recall this being referenced at least 3 times. And in our paperwork, these are the ideal dates that we need to come up with. I get the question, and I have no problem working to explore it.
No, I think I had the question before about the times and what were the physical attributes of needing to be named. So he's building the buildings. This was not the most important question. You know, getting the buildings built was a lot more important than answering my question, but, you know, it's still something,
But
and it's not critical to that.
I don't think we have 6 months.
It's just, it just will result in, you know, I've asked the contractors to hold on ordering anything relative to site signage, building signage, anything with the names. So what it means, you know, if I say, look, guys, I don't have an answer, you know, we're gonna have to push this back. Most manufacturers after a new year will say, we have a cost increase, you know, and you'll have to pay that increase, whatever we did. Maybe there won't be any.
Right.
But likely there will, and I don't want to come to you later and say, oh, by the way, since we're doing this now, there's an additional cost, and then I'll get hit with, well, why didn't I know? So you know, just so you're aware that that's, you know, something that will likely happen.
And that's why, in fairness to Doug, you know, really for months now, Doug has said we needed to make this decision by December. And so this issue was out there, it was out there, and then eventually we offered administratively to just take this process over, which we did last month. So we took it over, we're coming to you, ultimately whatever this school is named is up to the board. Whether it's Northampton, whether it's something else, it's up to the board. So we come to you this evening letting you know what your students and what your PTO presidents have coalesced around. But ultimately the decision is yours as board members.
I certainly recall, it may even be more than 3 occasions, but I know we've talked about it, that we needed to commit to this by this month. But can you just explain a little bit more about the process, how you included these schools, and maybe some of the other names that were considered, so it doesn't sound like they just all unilaterally said that one? I mean, I know that there must have been a lot more conversation and brainstorming, and including students and staff and parents and things. So what was that process like?
Sure. Barry Desco, our director of K-12 education, through principals, worked with student council leadership at the 3 middle schools. And so they worked school by school and came up with their rank ordered list. And then at the elementary level, the student leadership structure really looks different. There's not a formalized student council at the elementary level, but some schools do have some formalized student leadership group and some schools don't. But they all have some sort of homeroom council, and so that's who they used. And so there were some pooling of homeroom classes in 6th grade that went on, and so that's how that happened. So some of the other names that were considered, I don't know if you have the list in front of you. I know South
Middle School was the second name. and
Just South, not CR South Middle School?
just
Did the
South.
students come up with these names?
Yeah, as Dr. Fraser said, there were about 150 folks roughly as part of that core leadership team spread out amongst those schools, and they hold classes and respective students in those buildings. The PTO has dealt with the groups that they deal with.
And were there any guidelines? I mean, were they just said, you know, you're tasked with coming up with suggestions for the name of the school, and did they just leave it as
It was-
open as that?
It was pretty open.
Let me, when we built South, just by example, students named the building. They also named the street, which I think, forgive me, is a ridiculously stupid name. It's Rockway. I think it has no meaning to anybody. I had actually asked for, I don't think it has meaning to anybody. It's Rockway, which is at a school where the Rock is over in the other building, other district. By example, from a naming perspective, I asked, and we actually had support from American Legion 440 and a number of others, to name it after somebody that had a little more significance. We had a lieutenant who was killed in Vietnam. I think he got the Silver Star. It's the second highest award. Hennessy. And the thought there was, if you name it Hennessy Way or Hennessy Street or Hennessy Place or whatever it is, and you put the symbol of what a Silver Star is, at least it's a learning opportunity for students to look at it and say, what does that mean? Why is it named that? There's something which builds history and tradition of a school district that says somebody made a sacrifice, and we honor them that way. So I don't know, that's why I think that naming it after, it has no significance. Northampton, we might just name it the Northampton Water and Sewer Authority. I mean, that's the same thing. It has no significance. Forgive me, I'm from Northampton. It has no significance that means anything outside of that. I just think it's a lost opportunity. I'm not going to beat the dead horse on it, but I just think that we have the historical society of the communities that can contribute, and we generate names that are South or whatever they are. It's forgive me, if you ask sixth graders, you get sixth grader answers. So with all due deference, I'd like to see a little, that's me. You're right. And I guess my question is, or self-imposed is, if we're gonna do something, we have to resolve it by the middle of February, be done with it. Even if we don't include what the students came up with, but I think there's an opportunity to make it something which has more significance. You look at it, you look at the people who died in 2016, and you look at some of them were great people. You had John Glenn, you had a number of great people. You have a lot of people who meant nothing, in terms of social history or America. There's people from this area that mean something to this country, to this community.
I mean, I can envision a 30-day extension on this, but really no more than that.
That's what I say.
So this whole selling naming rights, you're not doing it.
I don't think so, but I think you're that's
It's just
historically more significant.
Yeah, you're just not going to be able to do it in 30 days.
Have to bounce back to the board and
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do we, if we feel that way, we defer to them, they came up with a
Right,
solution based on the ground of the community, which is good, but if we feel this way, then, we shouldn't necessarily lean back on them to do the work.
We had a student
We should do that.
who
So
went
if
to
we-
Holland Middle School who was killed in Iraq. I just assume name it that way and let students sit there and look at it and say, forgive me, was it Nixon? Was his last name? It wasn't. No, it was the other kid. There was a second student and I believe it was Nixon. I don't recall exactly. I apologize. I just assume name it after that child. That's former student. So when people say, what is it? It has to include the first name because of the political allegiance. But I would just assume name it after that student. And when kids say, what does that mean? He was a kid who went here and went off to fight for his nation and died defending freedom. I would just as soon have that.
I'm looking for consensus here. Jerry's pretty adamant where he stands, which is fine. I mean, they coalesced on Northampton Middle School. Do I have, I get your teachable moment. Andy, we go around and take it. Do we have, what's the will of the board? I'm trying to,
You're looking at me for the will of
No,
the board?
I'm looking at you for your opinion. No, I'm looking at you for your opinion.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm very good with Northampton Middle School. I mean, I think this is a very productive conversation, but it should have happened months ago. I don't think this is the first time we're talking about it. We have assembled 150 people to come together and work on this, and we're gonna sit here and say that we don't want, I'm perfectly happy going with what's on it.
I'm just kind of.
We'll do public comment at the end.
I think there was a good faith effort made to explore the opportunity to generate some funding through naming rights. And I think that yielded nothing really productive. So I think the effort was made and didn't pay off. And I think the administration came up with a good solution.
What was the effort? I don't know.
Well, I wasn't personally involved.
Okay. Who was?
Wendy took it on and
Oh, okay.
talked to some people.
Sorry.
I agree with everything you said, Jared, but I feel like we've dropped the ball on this one. I think this was a board initiative, and I don't find this offensive at all, and I don't want to send our administration back to say thanks for your input, but we're ignoring your input.
And I'm in agreement with the three of you. It's yeah, I get it, but it's Newtown Middle, Northampton Middle.
Can I just also say, I mean, I've asked for over a year to relook at the naming policy, which is a separate issue. But the naming policy as it stands gives the board the right and the ability to change the names of buildings at any time.
Yeah,
So if some miracle happens and somebody moves into our community and says, hey, I'll give you $5 million, would you name something for me? We'll be like, let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't think the door gets shut on that,
No.
but for the purposes of moving this along, I think we're okay with that.
Mark, you?
I'd like to give it, if we can spare 30 days, I'd like to see if the door is closed as far as funding, fine, I think we just need to know that. But I would like to see if there is a person of significance that might deserve, the honor of having that school named after him. So I think 30 days is not gonna hurt us.
I
unless you
can't
otherwise.
say, I mean,
You
I hope
can't
not.
say.
I mean, the sooner the better.
Yeah,
obviously.
Sure.
And Mark
We're in
imposed a
January
pretty
now.
tight deadline. I mean, that's not, I don't think that's,
The year's turn, so we'll see.
Um,
It'll be another
but-
month into January.
what I'm hearing here is.
And I would say this, just so you know where I weigh, I think that it's not a bad thing to consider something of cultural or community significance. However, I don't want to see this administration do any more work.
That's what I was just gonna say.
And if there's somebody on this board who's willing to take that on, I'm happy to participate with it. But I think there's also a conversation that goes back and respects the work that they've done and considers Northampton. I mean, this is the first we're hearing of it, and I think it's a perfectly good name given where Newtown is today.
Right.
I think Denise makes a very good point about our ability to change. We have to make a decision now for cost purposes on this building. It's nothing to say that, we can't look for over the course of 6 months and, attach some parameters to it that are financial to it and try and make some money.
I think we should let Wendy chime in on what progress, if any,
Yeah,
she makes.
It's not a bad idea.
I agree. I don't want to step on Jerry's toes, but I'm happy to take the ball for Northampton. I also don't want to just forget about Newtown. I'm not a big fan of just letting Newtown Middle School roll into it either. We do have an opportunity here. I don't know.
To do both, is that?
Yeah, why not? Look at that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what I
That's
said,
fine.
actually, when you look just by example, because of that, even if this goes forward, I'm gonna still make a proposal at a board meeting that we name it after. I'm fine naming Newtown Middle School. The Hennessy's lost multiple people in multiple wars to this community. They lost 2 that are honored out there, I think for the Second World War, at least 1 that was killed in Vietnam. In Iraq. No, in Vietnam. I don't remember that. But they've lost multiple people. So I don't have a problem naming schools after people who gave their life for this country. And for no remuneration for the district.
So what I'm hearing is you'll make you've got a 30-day window to make a staff.
I got it.
Mark's gonna make a staff, and we'll just,
Otherwise it's Northampton.
otherwise, I think we have the votes for Northampton, if you want to, but 30-day, and I really respect the amount of work. I don't want you guys doing more work either, and I want to respect what the students and the staff put into it too. So let's take a quick wag, and then, but we're going to close it off in February's meeting, so.
Okay.
No, well, Dr. Frazier's point, Northampton's what's been submitted, that
Yeah.
should be considered, and if there's something else that comes up that's worth equal
Correct.
consideration, then we have to make a decision.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? I know we're integrating other schools into the middle school. What is the reason for change? I mean, is that just something that we wanted to do, or is that?
We're combining two middle schools.
Right,
So
so,
we don't want to name it one or the other. It's
yeah, but
not
it's
fair to
still
the
one
kids.
building, right? No? I mean, it's Holland Middle School building you added one to?
Yeah, but we closed Richboro and we're moving Richboro children. So to give it a new community focus. we're
Because
changing
I was
it.
just thinking, you mentioned, Dr. Frazier mentioned the uniforms and stuff, I mean, that's gonna cost, I mean, how much that'll cost? To like redo all the uniforms for all the different sports? I mean,
Well, that's something that, uniforms have to get replaced on a regular basis anyway.
The
So,
school,
I
the
mean-
school population is, close to doubling, so these purchases were coming anyway.
Can I
I
just
think
make,
the difficulty, I'm sorry, Joe.
I just wanted to make one comment. I just so everybody knows, there is another Northampton Middle School. I know because I work there. So, it's it's near Allentown. It is within driving distance. So just so you know, there's going to be another school with the same exact name, very close in proximity. Just so you have that piece of information when you're making a decision. That's all.
Would you please allow a minute of public comment since some people were allowed?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, because I said at the end, and it
Yeah.
just didn't go that way.
So my 1 minute is that if the school board keeps its promise, some Northampton students will be going to Newtown and then on to North to equalize the schools. And we have a tradition in Council Rock where we name schools after locations. 6 elementary, 2 middle, and 2 high schools all have locations for naming. And since these schools are going to be feeder schools into high schools, I would prefer South Middle School and North Middle School. That's just my preference. My
No,
one minute.
that's fine.
And I also would like to have respect for volunteers who give input into the district. Because oftentimes we have committees and we don't even listen to them. So you have that dilemma now too.
Mike, you might as well let this
Okay,
lady
is any-
speak.
I like that. Part of their roots, Gary Kazen. I know that the process of naming schools with students is something that turns into a life of its own. I can tell you that, and it can be very humorous. And historically, Santa Cruz is the banana slope, and that was like a heady joke that actually stuck. They did a vote, and then just more recently, they had a ship that was built in Europe called Boat Face. They actually took it to a vote. So this gets to be a very big topic. Whatever we decide on, I can tell you, students back it, and they'll fight for it. And they'll have their teams and their bands, football teams. They'll back it. So whatever you do, it'll be good. Try to get a mascot too, because that turns into another big thing.
I just want to add one. I do agree, if you keep Northampton, it's good to see what's surrounding. I don't know if there is anything, the gentleman there said, because it can be confusing when you got to contact the school. I mean, I've been in that situation where you're calling something, oh, it's not this, it's that, when you go to 50 calls. So just something to consider.
What I wanted to see before is that I'm just really puzzled that the kids, like the Northampton Middle School was really the best that the kids could think of, because I mean, like, it's I don't know your name, but it would be Karen.
Yeah.
Well, like what Carrie had said, that kids can be like excited about like the naming process, about like a name, and like I just feel like that's. I mean, Council Rock. I mean, I've heard the story. I think that's like. It was named from a contest. High school students actually suggested a name, Council Rock. No?
It's named after a rock that the Indians met in Tyler Park. It was where they negotiated things, and it was called the Council Rock. So the school district was named after that rock from the history of the Indians that lived around.
Yes,
It wasn't a name.
Okay, let's try and keep it a public comment, not public discussion.
Okay.
It's just, I thought, I mean, that's a significance in the name. I just thought it was from a naming contest?
No.
No?
It may have been.
It was a contest, and the
It's submitted by
contest winner
students.
was based in historical significance in the community.
Yes.
Okay, capital improvement projects, update. So we know after the last meeting that we elected to go with $3 million amount for the summer work. So the projects that we talked about are underway. We've had site visits and the team are working on those drawings now. So I'll be bringing those back to you. In the interim, we've had some issues with the chiller at Council Rock High School North. Like we have many pieces of equipment throughout the district, and we have service contracts, people come in and perform the repairs, and you generally never know about those things because we do it on a regular basis. This time, however, the chiller work at North is $60,000 to $90,000 worth of repairs needed, which when you look at it, it's a 14-year-old piece of equipment with a 25 to 30-year life cycle. So you're looking at cost 14 to 20%. We had, under the public bid process, it takes $60,000 to $90,000 to replace it under public bid. It's about $425,000 for a liquid cooled centrifugal chiller, construction costs. By the time you take into account the fact you have to remove an outside louver and some other pipes that are in the way to get things in and out, you're looking at a total project cost with the fees of around $550 to $575 for one chiller. There are two chillers. I can't say when the other chiller is going to become equally as problematic as this one, but they're the same age, and it has its own problems as well, not to the same level this one does. So we had Johnson, who was also York, who's the manufacturer of the chiller, come in and take a look. And under a CoStarz program, they gave us a price of about $205,000 to replace a chiller, which is an amazingly low number.
Is that local, the Johnson's, local Johnson's?
Johnson Controls, they're
Oh, okay.
all, I mean, they have
Gotcha.
So that equates to about 30 to 45% when you compare it to the public, replacement cost. So it's about a $230,000 project. If you consider doing them both, you're looking at about $435,000. You're saving about 25 to 30 because you're only going to take out the exterior louver system once, all the phasing and logistics to get the crane, to get things in and out, do what you have to do. At any rate, if nothing less, I want to know if we can consider including as a part of these summer projects through the CoStarz program, replacing this chiller before the start of the warm weather. So this CoStarz process would allow us to get something in quickly.
The replacement will get you up to 30 years then. 25 to 30 years.
The other chiller is prematurely problematic. There were some issues with there's some airbound issues between the cooling tower and the system, and there's a house side and a chiller side. Definitely some problems.
What is CoStarz?
CoStarz is basically a state contract process. So they've competitively, the state has manufacturers that competitively bid products to the state. They take the low guy, and they're on the list of state bid projects so they can bid the worst. It's a very good opportunity. So it's just something that, I'm looking for some guidance from the board from. I would much rather spend at minimum at least the cost to replace the one new at $200,000 versus 60 to 90. And by the way, once they open it up, this is a big cast chiller, so it's not something you just go in, take nuts and bolts out of and pick up and move. literally bring a small crane inside, they hoist it up, they move it apart. It's a lot of.
So your ask in a perfect world is for 2 of these, it's gonna cost about $435.
In a perfect world, I would replace them both.
And you wanna do those before the summer window breaks to get in ahead of the,
North is a building that has no windows, that
Right.
needs chillers year-round. But if we can take the opportunity at the end of the beginning of the swing season to get in, get these out, and replace them, it would be.
and these give us 30 years each, and how much is left on with the replacement?
Well, the problem is, I'm looking at $90,000, and that's gas.
What's that bias, though? You don't know how much?
You don't know.
Is there a warranty on the new ones?
There is a warranty, I don't know what, I have to find out what the warranty is.
In excess of a year,
I would imagine equipment is usually,
right? Because
5.
repairs typically don't come with warranty.
right. Well, there's not, and when they take it apart, they're gonna tell us if there's issues with bearings or other parts. So it starts at that, and then it turns into potential.
Are we gonna see today or in the next month a budget projection for this year, just see how we're tracking? Or can we get that relative to this? Because if we're tracking favorably the planned budget, it seems like a good idea to me.
I mean, it seems like a 30-year.
If we're tracking favorably the
Yeah,
planned
yeah,
budget, I think it
yeah.
would be a.
And you're using these north, you're using, these chillers are running now. You're doing
Chillers
this way.
chillers are running now.
So they run,
Their lead line is 2
365
chillers,
days a
they're
year.
running 365
Yeah.
days a year.
So Doug, just so I understand, this is under capital improvements, so this is part of the $3 million budget.
I'm asking that it
You're
not be
asking-
part of the 3.
you're
I'm
asking
asking
for-
for 3.2
Yes.
or
3.4.
3.4, that's correct.
This
I'm
is-
asking your consideration for that.
Of course, we don't even know that the 3 is the 3 yet, because when the bids come in, maybe there's gonna be wiggle room anyway, right?
If we were to publicly bid it, yes. If we're doing it through the state
No, but
contract,
I mean, the other part.
correct. It may fall within that. It-
Right,
it
so
could
you don't even
potentially be
know,
within
but
the
this
3
is-
million.
This is a good opportunity.
It is, and I would rather, it's a lot of money to put into something,
and we're spending half of that 205
almost half of it.
anyway. We have to
Minimal.
do this.
Right.
We have to do this. We have to get this fixed. So,
I think the one is a no-brainer.
the one
One's
is.
a no-brainer, the second is a gamble.
And the second one is do you bet the Cumberland or the Pennzoil?
Correct. Can't disagree. But the second one has its own problems. It makes something, take you to the
Bless you.
road and let me check it out, kick the tires. It's not good.
Are they, and just the last question, those are the original chillers. We reformed the buildings.
These chillers were replaced when in 14, 15 years ago.
In 2000,
So the chillers are a mess.
these were replaced, we rebuilt the
These
building in
replaced
2005. We rebuilt the building largely in 2005. You think
They
these
must have been
replaced
replaced
them?
sometime shortly before that.
Okay.
Yeah, these look unavoidable, and it looks like doing both at once makes a lot more sense.
It's just a thought, but
Why such a short lifespan out of these? I'm hearing 25, 30 years, and
I agree.
now we're talking 12.
There's just been a history of repairs to these. I don't know why they were problematic. I can only speak to the 5 years that I've been dealing with them, and they've been challenging. We've had air in the lines, we've had problems, we put some additional equipment in to resolve that. I think when these are replaced, we ask our engineer to take a look and make sure that he sees no other issues before these go in, so that we're not having the same kind of, potential issues. It could be pipe sizes and things like that between.
Is there unseen benefits that come with new chillers to the energy efficiency of the
But
building?
these will be more energy efficient.
So we'll save money on top
We'll
of.
save some money. You can't just do.
You're not going to
You can't put money
recover.
to it.
You're not gonna recover.
You started to the point that I was going to get to, which was, if you're doing the two, the one is a no-brainer. It seems like a direct drop in replacement. If you're doing the two, I imagine there would be some engineering to reaffirm that, because if we've had the issues and it's pipe size, whatever, I don't want to stick it in and do this.
An engineer who's already involved with the summer projects, who came out to look at these to take a look. And he obviously said, you can get these at that cost.
Oh, yeah,
You should jump on it. I mean, it's a really good number. They're the same centrifugal chillers. They're good
Different.
pieces of equipment.
So they're different than what we didn't. I'm kind of
They have
disappointed.
multiple compressors,
Yeah.
they're oil-free, there's things that you
I'm
don't.
kind of disappointed with the lifespan of the last.
There's gonna be things
Just
that aren't going to go, that can't go bad in these that would with the others.
Okay.
because it's a different type. At any rate, something for you there. I'm not sure.
Do you need an answer tonight, or are you just bringing it to?
I mean, I'm happy to,
What do you?
pull the board later or tonight.
Yeah,
No,
I think it has to be done.
Yeah.
The question was, are we upping the 3 million to 3.4 million? That for
I
summer
guess that's
projects?
immediate.
That's the decision.
Well, I think rather than answer that tonight, I think you have to go back and say,
You want to-
here's how we would fund it. So again, if we're running budget favorable to this year,
Right.
that's one opportunity. And if there's, you look at, Bob looked at capital and says, hey, this is a better way to do it, given, what we're borrowing to do the other schools. You guys give us a recommendation on how you want to pay for it. I think you hear people saying this is probably a good idea. Now tell us the best way to pay
All
for it.
right, I'll get together with Bob and we can get back with you, whether it's an email to the board or another approach.
I'm good. I mean, clearly we have to do one. So I'd like to do two. And what Bob, the information Bob provides could
Yeah.
make this a lot easier to decide.
We'll get back to you on that, so you have more information to make the decision. No problem. The Natatorium roof structure issue has been resolved. As you're aware, we had some challenges with that. We had a tile that dropped into the pool on a Sunday morning. Fortunately, no one was there. Some delamination of some cementitious product underneath the roof line. We brought in Dewey Engineering, also under their umbrella, had a contractor who worked with them to set up scaffolding, remove ceiling, check out every individual bay of that existing roof structure. As originally the plan was to get in the shallow end, check the bays there, come back in the summer and perhaps do some additional investigation. While they were there, they did some additional investigation, they moved the scaffolding around. It did add about $12,000 to the total cost. That was also an additional 30 linear foot of, they couldn't use 30-foot planks. There was an additional, I think, 75 linear foot of of material removal while they were performing the work. All of this will fall under the claim to the insurance provider. They have been out, they observed the work, they're waiting for the final numbers. But this item will be on the board agenda. It's an increase to the original amount that I came to you with. It does now eliminate the need to come back this summer, drain the pool and build scaffolding in the deep end. So we're free and clear. They do want us to, from the pool deck, get up and look at a couple of those bays, and maybe in a couple of years, just come back to the deep end, take one more look, and then at that point, they're willing to say we're good. This was the tile that was actually caught on camera falling on a Sunday morning when the pool was empty. This was the original product that delaminated from the roof structure. Mar Allen came in, set up scaffolding in the pool, did a lot of work, a lot of effort to get up and do the work. The existing planks above the finished ceiling, which was once a finished ceiling, was a spray applied soundproofing, but there was a patching at these joints between the planks. That's the patching material that actually broke loose and fell. So they came in and they sound all those areas, remove all the loose material, and with buckets carefully get it out of the building. So
It's heavy. It's heavy.
It's heavy. Yeah, it's a cementitious product.
And we're confident that, I know we have an insurance claim. Within our insurance claim, we also have a retention, which is our deductible, if you will. And are we confident that that predates the work that was done to renovate the pool? Or was
Yeah.
that done in combination with renovating the pool?
This was 1970s.
Very good, thank you.
Yep. So the last item that, not last, but today, the item that Dewey is assisting us with is the North Natatorium wall crack. There was a crack in the ceramic tile in the pool. We brought them on board to perform some forensic work. They did some physical investigations. They provided a written report, and that is a report that I've also asked our legal counsel to take a peek at. because of the extent of work that it may be to make that repair. So that's a discussion, we'll follow up on at a later date. I'll let you know more about it. But as of now, we're kind of reviewing the findings and trying to decide the best approach to get this all corrected. But I promise you I'll regroup with you.
So the community understands E&J is Eastburn and Gray, it's the board solicitor.
Correct.
So it's highly likely that that conversation will happen in executive session.
That is
If it
correct.
has potential to include litigation.
Yes. Security update. It's been a little while since I've talked to you. Part of the budget for this current year was to perform a lot of the projects that are listed on this page. The camera replacement in north and south is complete. The adding additional cameras at Churchill Elementary School that weren't part of the original project, some outside the gym, some areas that we did have some vandalism in the past. We want to enhance what we have there. Richboro Middle School needed a single camera in a hallway that didn't have the camera that we would have liked, which will be easily moved, when we vacate that building. North and south elevators, there's been some suggestion to add some cameras within the elevators themselves. So we're looking at doing that. Additional proximity card readers at Goodnow Elementary School, a couple doors where the staff, after they started using the building, said it really would be great if we had a card reader on a couple doors. So adding a couple card readers, which prevents people propping doors open. Photo ID card printer for use at Chancellor. A lot of these things are things that I meet with Bill Rick on and his team when we talk about the needs of security. One of the big ones is a new server to replace an 8-year-old server, which will facilitate the needs of Newtown and Holland. As we bring those two buildings on board, we'll have more cameras than we have in the existing buildings, increasing the size and with the number of cameras that are added. That will provide us with 3 servers that are all less than 3 years old, which puts us in a good position from a security standpoint with the cameras and the servers. And as I said, all of this work is included as part of the current budget. So those are things that we're working on. A lot of security things. I don't like to go into a whole lot of detail relative to the planning, but if there are other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, to the board.
So,
anytime.
just one question.
Mhm.
You talked about the additional card readers, and the statement you made just concerns me a little bit. You said it stops people from propping open the doors.
Sure.
So,
It's human nature.
how often is that going on?
I can't say that it's happening on a regular basis, but there's occasions you'll go to a building and the door is ajar. I mean, it's human nature. Somebody goes out, comes back in. It's not a regular occurrence, but it's something that having a card reader eliminates that, because you go out, you bring your reader, and you're back in.
So it's not like there's a school that door number 5 is always
It's not a
propped
school
open.
that there's a rock next to a door, and every day they're putting the rock in the door. That's not the case.
Anymore. That was the way the.
Well, that's the way things did work for a long
Exactly.
time, not just here, but districts.
Everywhere.
Sure,
All
I
over the
understand.
place.
I understand, but we've spent a lot of money, and there's a
We
good
did.
reason for that,
Correct.
to make these schools
Right.
more secure.
And after we've done that, we've learned through creature habits how we're using the buildings and where it would have been beneficial to have 1 or 2 more. So that's my only.
You get people that, you'll get teachers that are unloading first thing in the morning, that bring carts full of material, and sometimes it's easier to pull up to a door, and they're in and out of the door without a reader, basically that kind of.
Board consent agenda items. One I have is disposal of the district vehicle, just a tired old van that our food service company used. It's entirely corroded on the other side of the van. No longer passes inspection. We're not insuring the vehicle any longer, and we would propose to donate it to the Northampton Fire Department for $1 for their use in having fun and practicing what they do. Natatorium roof structure, I mentioned that, the additional fee of $12,000.
I'm sorry, Doug, not to just out of curiosity, why we pick Northampton versus Newtown or Upper Makefield?
Tom Crow came to me with this. I guess he talked to them, or they talked to him and asked if he had something.
You want a bidding war, it's bidding this.
But
Just curious.
We could certainly, the next time one comes
Just
up,
curious.
reach out to one of the other departments and you know, keep working across the board. We might get
Neighbor to school. I
they might give us $2. So another board agenda item is furniture for Holland Middle School project. The reason I want to get that furniture now is that as we move through the respective phases of the project, that we have the furniture deliveries come for each phase. So when we're ready to occupy the next phase, the furniture would be moved into that, and then we would bring the teachers' belongings in, and the stuff that will no longer used would be removed. I solicited, this is another state contract process, so I could just simply go to PEMCO and say, hey, can you work with us and give us a price and use that? But in the spirit of getting competitive numbers, even through a state purchase, I worked with PEMCO, they inventoried everything we have at Richboro, Holland, and Newtown. We put together a list of things that can be reused in the facilities. And put together a list, a meeting with the principals and Barry on what we would need for the buildings. So I took that list that was provided, I shared it with the other two, obviously minus all of the cost and just the model numbers, and got numbers. The second low bid was $360,000. The low bid for PEMCO was $345,000. They have actually worked with us on furniture at Churchville, Goodnow, and Hollandale. We've had great success with them. They bird dogged the whole process. As I said, they've inventoried the existing furniture. We will have some furniture that will be reused, but likely we would take that and use it at the Newtown project because it would make sense to me. The stuff that's at Richboro, we would wait until the final building is done. We take it, move it one time to the Newtown project, and anything that we have at Holland that we can use, we'll just keep in that building and move it in that way. And what it may mean is there's a handful of classrooms that have a different color desk than other classrooms, but the entire room itself will have the same color desk or chair. So, you know, I don't think that's a problem. We'll solicit bids for Newtown Middle School.
You'll do the same thing.
It's 17-18. Yeah, we'll go through the same process. So that is on the agenda as
So
well.
we're not taking delivery of that until we need it, or are we gonna take it?
Correct, it's
next
phased
door?
deliveries.
We don't have to rent storage.
That's what
No, they'll deliver when they deliver this summer, they'll go in and any of the furniture that we currently placed, will replace that, put it in the new area, and then as we move forward, they'll continue to bring it to each one of those last 5 phases of projects. And we talked about Holland Middle School naming. One of the board item, agenda items was going to be the renaming of the school, and Rob Cox to get information from PDE in terms of what we have to do. I think that homework is still valid regardless of what we do. So whatever language we prepare will apply to whatever we come up with down the road. So it won't be on the agenda, obviously, for the 19th.
But at latest, it'll be on the February something like the third week.
Yeah, now facilities-wise, we don't have a February meeting because when we changed the dates of all those meetings, I had planned a vacation around the old.
That's okay, it's on us now.
So
You guys have done what we asked.
we have another meeting for facilities in 3 weeks,
3 weeks.
because we won't be here. in
Mark, it's
February.
3 weeks now. Not 4.
No, my point is if we're gonna talk about it again at facilities, it can't happen until
Yeah.
March, realistically. And Wednesday, I have a meeting with the contractors. I can ask them how it looks and how long we can possibly wait for this. So, master capital planning, last item, and Robert, I'll let you take this.
I'll take the first item here, and Mr. Reinhardt will take the second item up on the side here. So we are on the cusp of commencing our master capital planning process, of which we have 2 components, as you all know. The first of which will be school consolidation and repurposing of non-school facilities, with a board vote scheduled for June of this year. And the second component of which will be redistricting K-12 district-wide with a board vote in December of this year or January of next year. What I envision happening, and really what the discussion is here from a process standpoint, is redistricting. I envision a couple things. One is having a public community-based district-wide committee that's representative of all 15 of our schools on that committee. And the other thing that I envision for that process is partnering with an outside consultant to lead that process. That would be the redistricting process that would start this summer, continue through the fall, with a vote again in December or January. What we're really here to talk about this evening with this first bullet point up here is the first part of this process, which is school consolidation and non-school facilities. And what I'm envisioning for this process is to run this very similar to how we run these meetings, very similar to how we run these committee meetings. And that this would be an ad hoc committee. It would have a shelf life from February and then concluding in June, because a board vote is going to be in June. So we would start it up next month, run a series of 5 meetings on designated nights. So they would not be on existing board Thursdays. Invite the public. The public comment would be held at the end of each of these meetings. The majority of these meetings would be presentation of school capacities, of enrollment, of the real estate market, of modified full day K programming, of all the things that we know are going to be influential in terms of the board vote ultimately in June of this year. And then obviously with full board discussion, and then culminating each evening with full public discussion. So that would be the mindset behind it. Mr. Tate and I've had opportunity to speak about this process. And I think that you have a comfort level with it.
I think it's a well thought out process with a lot of opportunity for public engagement. Remind me, Dr. Fraser, we had decided to hold the meetings, all 5 of them here, correct?
Yes, the idea would be to hold these meetings in the boardroom. If it turns out in the boardroom over here, and we would televise these meetings as well. If it turns out that we have so many people that we're expanding beyond the boardroom, then so be it. We'll have to move them off-site. Televising at that point could prove difficult. So either we would need to outsource the televising component, or we would need to cease televising, and we would need to just broadcast through the Google Hangout, like we do these meetings.
Yeah, and I think the other advantage of holding all 5 here is, while we could do meetings out in the community, that would create some logistical confusion.
Right.
And I think doing it here erases the question of where the meeting is being held.
Exactly. And people who want to tune in from the comfort of the home can do that by virtue of us doing it over there.
Are you impressing, is your impression that it would be a subset of, or really is, or just another board?
Another board committee, we vote on it like we improve the charters.
Well, what I'm getting to is, would it come out with a report at the end that would be used as the basis? Or is it one of those things that the board members would need to attend each meeting to really have the flavor of what happened? So is there a packet that comes out at the end that says, here's the statistics and everything that came out to generate and the recommendation? Or is it one of those things that, how do you see it?
I think it depends on what the board members' availability is. My preference would be the board members are able to attend. Right. That said, we already have 4 Thursdays a month. And so this is one more each month. I completely get that.
And a different
completely understand it on an altogether different day. And so if that's not something that is logistically feasible or just, realistic for people, then we can certainly alter that plan and produce a report at the end. But the ideal would be to have attendance.
You'll set the calendar for the 5 dates in one.
We would set the calendar for the 5 dates. So if this in theory is agreeable to folks, I will float the 5 dates logistically out in the interim, and then announce those 5 dates at our next board meeting 2 weeks from tonight.
And I've asked Andy Block to chair the committee. Andy's available, and Andy's got the experience, I think, to do a good job with it. So, and he's agreed, haven't you?
Well, assuming we approve the charter and you appoint me on it.
Yeah.
So thoughts?
You're televising.
Yes, televising.
Sorry.
That's okay. We had the community groups
Yes.
3 years ago, just, so I can already hear the folks saying, how is this different? So I'm going to ask the question, how is this different from what we did previously?
Well, I wasn't here for
I
that,
understand.
so others
I
are
understand.
probably better equipped to answer it than I am. But what I would say is that those 3 reports I've read. I'm in the process of reading all 3 again, emphasis on again. And those 3 reports are informing and influencing the work this time around.
So is it fair to say it could be a honing of the work that was delivered from those 3 reports? Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's absolutely fair. Yep. That work was not done in vain, for sure.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, the communities did some phenomenal work. There were some consistencies in there. Ultimately, they were to fuel the decision that the board had to make. So the board owns that decision based on inputs. Those community groups did great work. They were good input. I think that now informs the input that you guys are doing, now that you're able to frame up capacity, updated capacity, information, redistricting scenarios, all those types of things. So, I think that we need to be clear in the sense that those communities did great work. They provided their input, and that's, they serve their purpose.
Robert, it sounds like each night there'll be a basic topic. It would be helpful. I've already gotten emails from the community about how's this process going to work, how do I get involved in it. I was under the misimpression there was going to be a community subgroup, so I think it'd be great if we're going to announce the dates, we announce the topics. We're going to do school capacity one night, and we're going to do, I don't know what the 4 topics are, but I'd at least, especially if I'm not going to be able to make them before, I appreciate knowing kind of what the idea of what we're talking about, what the 4 critical areas are. I mean, I don't need a detailed agenda, just school capacity this night. I don't know what the other 4 are.
Yep, absolutely.
But we're only talking 4 meetings, and so, if you give us the dates, like hold these dates, and then give us that, but at some point, it'd be great to have those 4 topics ahead of time.
And that's what I think it'll be. We have a total of 5 meeting dates, is what we're gonna earmark. We might not need all 5.
Okay.
We'll see. So we're gonna have designated topics for the first 2.
Okay.
The first meeting is gonna be action-packed. It's gonna have just a potpourri of topics to it. We're gonna cover a lot of ground in the first one. And then the second one will have a more narrow focus to it. And then I think we'll let the agenda be driven from the outcomes of those first 2 meetings
And
from there on out.
not when we are making votes or decisions at those meetings.
Nope, we're not. We are not.
So
we're gonna vote on an
important
overall
to be-
plan at the end of
It'd
it.
be very, very important if what is happening in those 2 is even gonna drive what gets presented in 3 and 4. I mean, there is an enormous amount of community interest in this topic.
Yes.
So I already don't think that room's big enough. That's just my 2 cents. We'll see what happens. But B, the public needs warning and time. People will rearrange their lives to come to these. The community will rearrange. So if that's going to be action-packed, and you already know that, I think that should come out with the date. And the second one is, and if conclusions or impressions are going to be drawn from them when we know what we need to get as before we leave that meeting, those things should be told to the public too.
Agreed.
Yeah, the key's gonna be communication. There's also a process that we have to follow
It's
around
not
potential school
8
closures.
years
so-
on the board, even with the last time we did this, I never had emails before the process started. So for
Okay.
me, that's an indicator.
Yep.
Usually, once the process is over, I'm getting the emails.
Yeah.
But people are waiting with bated breath for the next meeting.
Good to know.
But I would imagine this potentially, we're gonna talk about this, how this will start rolling out at the regular board meeting?
Yes,
Yes, so it's.
sure will.
Can you say again, please, what the makeup of the committee's going to be?
Everybody.
The makeup,
Everybody, what do you mean everybody?
so we'll run it just like we do our committee meetings. So it'll be the administrators who are involved in the process, which will typically be the majority of cabinet plus the full board. And then the public will be invited. to be there, which will have a whole lot more public there than what we have at our typical
To
community.
be there as spectators.
Yes.
Yes,
For public comment.
but with public comment more akin to a committee meeting as opposed to a board meeting.
Can I ask what it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. So are you gonna structure it where you have public comment before and after the meeting?
Just
Like
after.
board meetings? Just,
Yeah,
Because we're not voting then.
I get it, I just want to.
yeah, we're not voting and we're gonna have formal presentations each evening. So that way folks have a chance to see what's presented and hear what's presented.
And then there's a
Before the
second
comment.
phase to the process where redistricting is
That's
a
after June.
discrete, separate process.
Redistricting
just so
is a
there's no
whole separate
confusion.
process, and that will involve parents from all 15 schools.
I just think we have to be open that if along this process, it looks like we're headed down a path, we may need a whole night of just public comment. It depends which way we go.
Absolutely.
How that goes.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
I'm wondering, we're gonna end up outside of this building, for sure. From a,
If that's what we think, then
so I.
let's go ahead and just go
would
do it
make
outside this
sense to
building.
Start outside this building?
I think that's
So that
fine.
there is consistency throughout 5 meetings?
You mean pick a location and just stick with it?
I mean,
for 5
I
years?
just asked Matt if where we're better equipped to do it. We're gonna end up there. So if
That's
the
fine.
first one is here and
We
then the
held meetings
second one.
itself in the auditorium. I think it'd be good to balance.
But they're a
Different
nightmare,
places.
they're a nightmare for video.
Yeah.
We have the wiring itself to support it. I do not have the equipment to do it. If you want to broadcast it, we're going to have to bring in an external company to do it. But we do have the wiring in place to get the signal where it needs to go to broadcast it over the television channel. And now with the knock at north, we could jury rig something to get it working at north too. But south would be my preference as far as wiring goes.
It's just.
That's always a problem. That's,
But
Because I don't have the equipment.
wherever it is, I don't want it to be a road show. I don't want it to be, this night in a school. It's got to be consistent for the community and for the board, just.
That's what I'm saying.
Agreed.
Well,
Yeah.
but when we had a capital planning meeting in South 2 years ago, we had to end it because there was issues with people watching at home. We were getting texts while we were at the meeting that people couldn't
We have
hear.
that here too.
Well, that was worse. I mean,
Agreed.
that was definitely worse. But, I mean,
and there were a handful of people there, if I remember right. I mean,
right. I mean, we could try here and see what happens and then you move someplace else.
Have a plan B.
So the way this is likely to unfold is, I mentioned 5 meetings. In addition to the 5 meetings, we need to have the formal hearing that Rob Cox has talked with us about. That formal hearing will likely be immediately before one of our board meetings. And that's really a very brief presentation and then public comment.
Very long.
Very long public comment in all likelihood, and in all fairness. So that right now is slated for the February meeting, February 16th, next month. So we'll have the first meeting.
Wait, what?
So our first of these 5 meetings, the date that I'm going to float to you will be on February 8th. And then the public hearing would be at our board meeting on February 16th.
Why do we need a public hearing?
There has to be a public hearing. There's no vote at the public hearing, but there has to be a public hearing. If any school is going to be up for potential closure, then there has to be a public hearing on that.
Say some school.
At least 3 months.
We don't even know what school?
No, you do know what school. You have to name the school.
Middle school.
Yeah, so at minimum, we have to do that for Richboro Middle School. Yeah, sure. At minimum, we have to do that for Richboro Middle School. And you have to do it at least, it's closing as a school.
Not necessarily as a building.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you have to do that at least 3 months before the board vote. So the board vote will be on June 15th. Go back 3 months, then that puts us at least to March 15th. And if we want to do it before a board meeting, it really puts us back to February.
But our decision about other buildings won't be solidified then.
No, so the public hearing is really just to present some basic information and hear public comment. and then you let that public comment sit and settle for 3 months,
And you can
and without
include
making
that
any
for,
decisions.
for Richboro Middle, it's a foregone conclusion, that one is locked in. For the others, are they just listed as a school, and I'm missing this?
They're listed as schools that are up for potential closure,
Okay.
and this is the public
And
hearing.
we can have all that hearing, and we have to have all that hearing for each of those schools together.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep, it's one hearing,
I was concerned that we had to have
whether it's one
X
school or,
separate schools.
no, it's one hearing.
And so when you have the hearing, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to,
So all three schools.
it's not committing to anything, it's just opening up the process.
It's not committing to anything at all.
And so
That's right.
does it indicate that you have to take a vote on those 3 schools ultimately?
I don't believe so. I'm not certain of that answer, but I don't believe so.
My understanding was, from past experience, was once you have the hearing, you've covered the hurdle, and then you can choose to act on it or not.
I think
Let it
that's
go to the
correct,
law.
yeah. That's my understanding too.
And we're talking about closing the schools in September or closing the schools a year from September?
A year from
So
September.
why would you have a hearing
Yeah, why
on
would
schools
you
that you know?
now?
Because when you
Because-
vote on it,
In
when you
order,
vote on it.
yeah, because in order for us to redistrict, we have to make the redistricting decisions by December, January. And you can't redistrict until you know what schools you have.
Makes sense. So we're gonna.
So
make a
you're
decision
back
in
mapping
June.
from the redistricting process.
This is, it's been an overwhelming year as a new member of the board, and it's been difficult to keep this timeline clear in my mind. But it is a timeline that you've laid out in the past, and it's sort of difficult to understand. But just to reiterate, we're in the situation of having to make a decision essentially 14 months in advance for the potential closure of a school or 2 schools or 3. The one we know that we're closing is Richboro Middle School. And if we're going to consider closing 1 or 2 elementary schools, given the declining student enrollment, then we're bound by legal consideration of state law to make that decision 14 months in advance. It's hard to wrap your head around that.
We're not going to make it 14 months in advance.
Right.
Because of technically the other process act, we're only bound by law
You're right.
6 months in advance.
That's right.
So that's why I was confused.
It's because we're
It's our
redistricting.
timeline.
Because of how we've designed, how we want to handle the redistricting.
We're just
Yes.
getting way out in front of it.
If we weren't redistricting, we would not need to make this decision as soon as what we're making it. But we are redistricting. That's what's driving the whole timeframe.
You could, I'm asking, I'm not saying, what I'm saying is to say, you could redistrict, even though you have 10 schools, you could redistrict into 9 and just not include one of the schools and then issue the order to close it, could you not? If you choose not to use a building, but don't delist it from PDE, you could.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Just make sure you tell me which 9.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but that's what I was trying to get to.
So that's kind of where I'm thinking too, because the back mapping, as you refer to it, feels backwards. Maybe there's a good reason for it, but why wouldn't we redistrict, see where the lines fall and where the kids are coming from, and then that's how you decide what schools we need. Doesn't it feel? Is there anyone else that feels
Said
backwards?
it all along, I don't understand.
Yeah, but because again, I think about Wrightstown Elementary. How do I decide which way I go to Wrightstown Elementary unless I know where the kids are coming from? I have a hard time with that.
Where the kids are going.
You can do that.
No,
The
where they're
only-
coming from. We're talking about where they're coming from, right? What homes are going to Wrightstown? And then do we need Wrightstown? Do we need?
You mean to actually redistrict or to redistrict on paper?
I don't know.
I would say actually redistrict.
If
But
you
I think
actually
the work of the
redistrict,
so the
then
work of the ad hoc committee is gonna say, look at the district holistically and say, here's our capacity. So here's the classrooms and the buildings that we need. And then based on the capital improvements these buildings need, where the populations are, here's what the potential footprints of kids could be. First, we have to equalize north and south. We've got the middle schools and the high schools done. But then you start looking at exactly what you're talking about, Mark, for the middle schools or the elementary schools, and this ad hoc committee will serve up, here's the work that we did and the options for potential closures, and here's our best recommendations. And we'll then have to see, we'll see that information and make decisions.
But
So
it boxes you into a corner
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily need to be boxed into. I'm not talking about, this is not about my personal feelings about Wrightstown, this is not about Rolling Hills. It boxes you into a place where you then must make it fit, as opposed to what is the composition, where is everybody feeding from? You start at Deerfield, your furthest most school in Wrightstown, and you work your way back through the south, and you see how far kids are really gonna have to travel, instead of forcing kids to travel potentially entirely too far or in distances that we would not ordinarily be comfortable with.
I don't disagree with you. I think some of that goes into the recommendation. I mean, you have to start with the capacity. I mean, here's just the capacity that we need. Here's where it sits. You do some of that work and it starts to come together. I don't think it's a perfect science. I certainly don't think we box ourselves.
That's actually why I was kind of listening for.
Well, there's no work behind the meetings. I mean, it's not like, it's not like the work only happens at those meetings.
That's why I was sort of listening for Wendy's question, because I wondered too, if it made sense, although it's more difficult for the board, not so I think it simplifies the administration's course, was if we made incremental decisions through each of these meetings. So what's presented at meeting 1, we resolve and revise and decide for meeting 2, and then meeting 2 happens, so that we actually then get this rolling movement forward, which for those people who don't see this, I'm drawing a funnel in the air, instead of you, Robert, having to deal with the full breadth of the funnel. Each meeting you get an incremental reduction in width that eventually gets us to the point. Because I have the concern that I have, and Wendy, this is building on your question, which may have been your question about incremental decisions, was if we could get to that point, you'll come out at the end with a much more refined target, rather than having to prepare this great breadth of space. You'll dip it down to 1 or 2 solution sets at each meeting, rather than 16 at the end. It'd be difficult. It's more difficult for the board because we have to make decisions and commit to them sooner, maybe with imperfect knowledge, but life is like that. But it will, I think, accelerate the project and make the administration's ability to come to hard, fast, accurate, and complete numbers easier. I think you'll get there anyhow, even with 16 points at the end, but you'll be whipped. You will be tired. If you get to it at the end, there are 2 because we've made all these incremental decisions. I think it would be more leading, more.
I'll put my engineer hat on for a second. I mean, redistricting fundamentally, you've heard me say this is a math problem. You have children that need to go into schools. You tell me where the schools are and how many kids we can fit. And it's not a perfect math, but we put the. You suggested you'd like outside help with the redistricting part, and I think you were thinking starting in June you wanted the outside help. What I'm hearing now is a couple of what-if scenarios. Could we bring the outside help in? I mean, once they're set up, taking a building out, redistricting, putting a building in, redistricting. Not perfectly, but would give us a feel, an approximation for what things would look like. So to your point, we bring them in, here's our demographics, here's where the kids are, here's our buildings, and the capacities of these buildings. Now we take out building 1, let them run the scenario, this is where the kids are gonna go. Okay, now we put that building back in, let's take out building 2, this would be where the kids, I mean, it isn't going to cost a lot. The cost in doing the redistricting from an outside source is set up. But once you're set up, I mean, it is incremental to do a couple of scenarios. Would that help? I mean, because really it's an optimization problem. It really is. It is really straightforward. I know we're talking about children, please don't, but we can take buildings in now. We can talk about buildings all we want. You take them out, kids are going to flow this way. do we want to get you that help sooner, I guess?
It's already part of the plan.
Okay, so I mean, that would be.
That engagement, I've already made contact with the potential demographers that we'll use for that process.
Okay.
And that's because I don't want to wait until the summertime to start that relationship.
Right. So perhaps we can address some of the board concerns as we move forward with these 5 meetings.
Yes,
That's the.
we'll have to develop models along the way.
Right.
Yeah. What we don't want to do, in my opinion, and I've said this a couple different times publicly, is redistrict any child twice.
Absolutely.
And so that's my concern with doing redistricting and then making the consolidation decisions, because then you have to redistrict again.
But we could model it.
But we can model it, right?
And very publicly model it and show results.
Right.
Removing a school here.
Exactly.
You could do it 11 times if you wanted to.
Right.
But the modeling also depends on the other variables that we have to consider, because if you're just going to look at the capacities as they exist, that assumes that programmatically we're the same now. But if we were to add a modified kindergarten, for example, that changes obviously how you're using your buildings. Or if we wanted to relocate something that's at LSAC into an existing building, that takes, you know what I mean? So there's just so many different variables to consider. So the model is, I mean,
It's a capacity number. The only variable that changes in all those scenarios is the capacity of the person.
right, but that's the most critical one.
But that's not. Once the model is built,
Right.
you can have
Right, but
1,000
you can look at a
variables.
certain model that says this works, but then if you change a variable that
Then you
changes
can
the
look at it
capacity.
again.
Right,
And you
but
can look
that's,
at it again. So.
but that's why it's sort of the cart before the horse in terms of which decision comes first, so that where do you anchor it so that you're not running so many different, scenarios based on whatever variable you're going to pick and choose.
The anchor is the fall of 2018.
That's true.
We are anchored, so that's.
Well, and that's the point. How do we most quickly and efficiently and effectively get to a decision that everybody can get behind and live with, right? So we couldn't build tracks at the middle schools primarily because we didn't have room for one of them, right? So we moved ahead with this middle school project in Newtown without exploring all the options, without knowing all the variables. And it feels to me like we're doing it again.
In 5 weeks?
In 5 weeks. So and once, you could say, we're having a hearing about closing this school and closing that school, but when the train leaves the station here in this district, it's gone. It's gone. That's how it feels to me.
Well,
And that's been my experience. That's been my experience.
no, for this process.
I can only tell you how I feel about this process based on the processes in the past. So listen, if that's going to be the direction, and that's how the board wants to handle it, that's how the board wants to handle it. And it's not a criticism of you, Robert. For me, it's flip-flopped in my brain. But that's just me, one person.
In the sense that you ought to think that you think the redistricting work ought to be done in advance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just have some, we have to be mindful of the sensitivities of the community, because it's been out there since October, within the community, that this was the process that we were going to follow, that by June we would make the decisions about the footprint and then the redistricting committee would form. But I do agree that bringing in the demographer to help add information and insight into this first part should make this, have our questions answered better.
And realistically, then the redistricting is done when the decisions are made, because the models are done. I mean, you can cram over and smear some lines here and there, but if we're gonna build the models,
A big chunk of it will be.
a big chunk of the work is done. I mean, it's done by the demographer.
But there are other pieces to consider in terms of
Absolutely.
how long is too long to be on
Right.
the bus,
But
and what is
that's
our
part of the model.
philosophy of.
That's part of the model. So if it's already encoded in what we're doing, it happens. And in a way, that's very fair to the community, because we're not imposing, our opinions we've said, well, we want kids to be on a bus no longer than this and travel no further than this. We said all those things. Okay, the model says this is the answer then. Now, if we don't like the edges of that, well, it's exactly what we said it should be. So we're I don't want to lose you back. All right, you want to, before we go to public comment, if the board is done, do you want to do the second bullet point on here real quick? Sorry.
As you're aware, we are moving in a lot of directions to prepare for this analysis. And one of those directions are evaluating the properties that we own. And I think it's a big part of the decision model to say, is this one better, or the worth of the property and what we can do with them. I did have a call with our solicitor to talk about, should we decide to sell a property, what is the process we need to go through? And one of the processes that are essential in doing this before we would sell a property is to get a certified appraisal of these properties. That helps us understand that we're giving, if we would sell something, that would be an adequate cost, and we wouldn't be scrutinized by the public saying that it was some not arm's length. So what I have here is I've gotten 5 different appraisers that work in Bucks County from different school districts in Bucks County that said they've worked with them. I've had experience with 2. I want to know from you, how would you like that selection process to go forward? Because appraisals don't happen like I called them today, and we have a appraisal report from the properties we need quickly. This could take a month, 2 months to get done. I just want to know if the board wants involvement. I talked to Rob, does he want to give an opinion on that? He said if this would be some type of litigation and an expert, he would probably give an opinion on that. In that this is just something for guidance, he would rather have it being a local decision on our part. I have the list. If you say, I want you to do a full-blown RFP, I will do that. It'll take some time. If you say, Bob, I want to be involved in sitting down and interviewing companies, let's talk about that. But I'm here just to understand what you guys want.
I'm trying to understand the urgency of this, which is, at least my impression is that as a board, I don't think we're making decisions based on the value of the property.
Okay.
Or at least I'm not. I'm trying to make sure, because the property may be really valuable, but it's where it is. So and it's really, forgive me, but it's not so much the appraisal of what is the property worth, but to me it becomes, if I had to change the property or modify the property, what does it cost for me to do that? So it's more on Doug's head than on the head of, sorry to do that, but than on the head of what's the value of the property. The value of the property, we've had these appraisal games played before, not games, which is appraisals are wonderful. And you have a $5.5 million appraisal, but nobody wants to buy the property. So its value is really not.
Yeah, well, that's why the commercial real estate agents also listed there, which would be the second step. It wouldn't be the first step.
I hear you, but I just think it's really premature. I would sooner decide what we need based on its location and capacity. And at the end of the day, now I'm open to being told there's a better way to think of it, but at the end of the day, if we decide, between 2 buildings, am I going to get rid of one that's worth $4 million and one that's worth $7 million, and I'm going to make that decision? I'm not going to use that as the basis for my decision.
Is it information that you would want to be available in case that becomes a determining factor? So that if we have it, it's there, but if we don't have it, it can't be decision. Yes.
But the buildings, see, my point is the buildings are, if the buildings were identical, and I'm just using them because they are located, easily communicated. I have two buildings on New Road in Northampton.
Yes.
I have 2 buildings at either end, or really, of Old Jordan Road, of East Jordan, or Old Jordan Road in Northampton. Right, if I were trying to decide between those 2 buildings in each case, yeah, that might be relevant. Because,
I will
but first of all,
second row if you want me to.
But first of all, for me, it's what can I do with what goes on in the building, because that's what I'm deciding, what's in the building, not how much it's worth. That's just me. So for me, I think this is a little premature. For me.
It's a piece of information. Don't we have existing appraisals for every asset we own?
We have replacement costs for insurances. That's replacement
Okay,
costs.
that's not what I'm asking.
And we have historic costs for accounting records.
Right.
We don't have fair value or assessed, appraised value for the marketability of it.
What's this cost, Bob, to get the work done?
It's gonna be, I would expect $20,000 to $30,000.
Yeah, see, but at Eastburn and Gray, we've had Mark Capucci, you know, which is to do a formal appraisal, and we will need that.
Yes.
Before we were ever to dispose of a building,
Yes.
we would need a formal, agreed. But Mark has people he's dealt with time and time again, as have we, who could do an informal appraisal to give us a map.
Again, I look at the commercial real estate agent doing that. I was advised by our attorney that.
Oh, no,
that
I'm
probably
not
would
talking
be-
about an agent, I'm talking about appraisers. I'm talking about an appraiser, he's not giving you a sealed
Right.
solution, he's giving you.
If we are talking about something other than a sealed, I mean, I can determine what the price is by, getting proposals from them. I mean, I could define whatever we want to say we want something other than that. And I don't know what their ethical standards say, what they can do and what they can't do, because I am sure, because that's a profession just like an accounting firm. I can do this or.
Don't we have, as part of the audit work that we've seen in the past, aren't they encouraging us to make sure we've got an up-to-date appraisal on the current value of the assets? Doesn't this play into that too?
No. It's the historical cost basis you use for the accounting.
I was
Replacement value for insurance, but it's,
Yeah, I mean.
there's a replacement value and then there's a value, a fair value that someone's gonna pay for it.
I'm confused, for $23,000, what are we talking about? What are we appraising? I mean, that's a lot of money.
We would have to
Every
be,
building. in the
Every single
district.
building in the district?
no, I think it would be
So
targeted buildings.
So what, specifically, what buildings are you talking about getting appraised?
There are 5 buildings that I will tell you, it's inclusive, not exclusive. So anything that I even look at that could be considered part of the decision that I've heard. And understand this is broader, not narrow, because I know as soon as I say this, everyone's gonna be like, why is that? Of course, Richboro Middle, Rolling Hills, Wrightstown, Twining Ford, and Chancellor Center. Those are the 5 buildings that, I'm not telling you it's targeted, I just want to tell you that there has been things that I've heard. It's not something that Bob Reinhardt knows something, I really don't, it's something that I've heard discussed.
That's part of the conversation
Yes.
that we've had. It's just historically, this building, the best offer we had on this building when we were looking at what we were gonna do with it was $600,000. That was the best offer we had to buy this building.
By charter school.
By charter school, by Ramon, I think it was, or a Jewish charter school. No, it was a Jewish day school. It was 600, we still spent $2.4 or $3.2 million to renovate. So it didn't figure into the appraised value, or that was actually the market value.
Right.
I don't know, if I was considering the future of Chancellor Street and I was told by a commercial appraiser that the best you can get for this building is $600,000, that would have me thinking in a different direction than if a commercial real estate appraiser said, I think fair market value is $2 million. All of a sudden, it looks a lot different in terms of what we ought to be thinking about for the future of this building. So I think to have the information about the value of this building, and oh, by the way, we should get an appraisal of the value of Richboro Middle School because it's no longer going to be a school building. We ought to know what the potential value is there. I think having that information is worthwhile. And, you know, I mean,
But it's
you know,
it
it's-
may not, the difference is, imagine, so we'll go back in time to when we were looking at this building, whatever, many years ago. If someone said, relevant to that was more important to me was how much it was going to cost to renovate it. Because, it didn't matter. It could be worth 2.1 million. If it costs you $1 to renovate it, that's a pretty good deal. If it's worth 600,000, but it's going to cost you 2.6 to renovate it, that would be a different deal.
But we have all that, and Doug's done all that.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say,
That's why I'm not advocating against the appraisal.
when,
I thought that's what you're pushing against.
when you're looking at a plan, right? I mean, when I do value engineering studies on facilities, you go in with a clear head without judgment.
Yeah.
You put everything on the table, regardless of what they are. There's no sacred cows. And you should have all the information that you can on the table. I mean, I'm just looking at it the way I manage that process, right? What are the renovation costs? What are the costs to replace the facility with a new facility? What's it cost to put the additions on to meet the capacity that it once was or we may need? What's the value of the property? All of that information on the table, as Ed said, helps you make the best decisions you could make.
What's the cost or profit of walking away from a piece of?
So
That's
to support what Bob's saying, I think that's one of the reasons why you would want to put all that on the table. So you guys have all the information you can and the committee to make the best information and the best decisions possible.
Would you want me to go out and seek proposals from these just to see what the cost of the 5 buildings or any other number of buildings you'd like?
It's professional services.
Yes. Well, I will tell you that I've had experience with Indian Valley and they were very good. Mastrioni was very good also.
Yeah, and we used him in litigation.
Yes.
The only reason I mentioned that it was professional services because it's not the sealed bids and
Where are you getting the cost of $20,000-$30,000? You're talking about 5 properties, $20,000-$30,000.
So I took that value based on the knowledge I know that we've paid before. That could be off, but you've asked me the number because I haven't gone there, but I believe it is not going to be $2,000.
So I understand all but Chancellor Center. I think if we polled the board, there probably really isn't any appetite to have a discussion about closing Chancellor Center and moving. To throw Chancellor Center grenade into the middle of everything else we have to do,
You're in trouble if you do it.
it just seems unnecessary for me. I can see Ed's point about why not have the appraisal just to see what the value is, and maybe it becomes a non-issue, but I think it's kind of a non-issue. Unless there's chatter going on I don't know about, I just don't.
I've discussed it from the board that
You said it publicly.
I've said publicly that for me, because I'm going to have 2 buildings potentially that could serve as administrative centers, potentially this building as it exists, and Richboro Middle School as it may exist. And because of the foreseeable upkeep and expense to maintain this building, which is appreciable, and the number of items that need to be done to remediate and continue this building are steep. So I've had that advocacy for a while that it's not a sacred cow, I would consider where to place the services that are currently in this building and elsewhere in the district. So that's me. So
don't forget Richboro Middle School. I mean,
it's not free either.
Right. It's a building that's from 1965 that hasn't been touched.
And
that building does not come.
Since we're talking about Chancellor, and Jerry, you said that publicly, and I don't think there can be any sacred cow, but I think that you have to prioritize and pick your where your focus is going to be. And again, with the community, a community group came together and formed and saved this school, and we made it an administration building, and that has some level of commitment to the community. And I think it's very, very doubtful that we would ever go down the road of selling it. And why throw it into the mix right now when we have so much else to do? It's my opinion.
Robert, I didn't hear you throwing it in the mix. That's fall of 2018 we are not going to move or do anything with buildings until we're in the middle schools. All we're doing is getting an appraisal. It's just an appraisal. It's a number.
I don't know why we do it. We're not discussing it now.
Cost savings would be the only reason I would think to get it done in mass.
Okay.
I'm doing it. Again, I'm telling you,
I'm
I'm including whatever could become an issue Not that I'm excluding things or anything. It's because I've heard these comments, and you guys can change the list any way you want, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Do we have any consent? Do you want to get a price? I mean, I think that would be the next thing.
Do you want me to get a price on everyone, or I've had experience with 2 of them? Or do you want me to get 5?
I think you should get an appraisal on every building we have then. I mean,
No,
that's what we're-
no.
I mean, it seems
No, I
so
mean, which
absurd.
firms?
5 appraisers to tell us how much.
I have,
So, and could you get the cost of, I mean, is it broken out like, if,
Per
if
building?
5,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can do that. I can give them a-
make it like a menu.
Yep.
So if it's 3 schools, 3 buildings, 2 buildings, 5 buildings, 4 buildings, what?
I'll give them a list of
what
our
that
buildings, and I'll
scales.
give them the statistics Doug has.
Yeah, get us a price per building, aggregate it to a total, we can look at it.
And then we
Boom,
decide.
boom, boom.
And I will go with the 2 that I know. Are you okay with that, rather than?
I am personally okay with that.
Go with the 2 you know, and if they're not close, broaden your scope a little bit.
Okay.
If they're very much depth, if they're within a few $1,000s of one another, you know where you are.
I will have this up by the beginning. of
Why,
next week.
why not include the Howe property if we're, I mean, really,
I think we just decided we were going to do that with all of our.
All
We're just gonna
right.
give them in.
all of
What?
it. So we are
All
now,
parties.
All
we are
aspects.
now appraising all of our.
Does it make
buildings
sense?
and assets. Okay.
I hear you say that.
No,
I would suggest that we not include north and south, because I don't think they're
Well, okay.
a possibility. Holland Elementary, I don't think it's a possibility, we just renovated it. Goodnoe, we just renovated it. So are there things that are out of Holland Middle, Newtown Middle?
I would say please stay.
Yeah. So
There are sacred cows.
they're not sacred cows, they're just, it would take a hell of a scale on that mountain to get up to the point you're gonna get rid of the building you're.
Can I suggest, yeah, since this is obviously, why don't we start with the 5 that we were discussing and decide what additional properties we want assessed?
Well, we weren't discussing 5. We were,
Yes, we,
Bob presented 5,
yes.
but we were discussing many, or 4, or 6. But I would say we're gonna look at these 5 with the potential, let's look at the vacant land we have.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I think that plays
That's-
long-term into the.
That's,
We're going,
I don't think we have to.
we're working
I
towards.
don't think we're gonna sell North, I don't think we're gonna sell South, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think we're gonna sell Chancellor.
I
But,
agree.
but, you know, let's be reasonable and mindful of that. If we have a goal in mind, and that goal is, let's look at all the potential assets that we could at some point, or in the next 18 months.
Churchville, Holland, Goodnoe, the 2 middle schools and the 2 high schools we will not touch.
They're off the list, right?
They've all been just renovated in the last 6 years. You guys good with that?
yeah, I think you're good. Yes, you're good. So you are doing the 5 things you mentioned and the Howe property for sure.
Yes.
That's at least the start.
Any other board comments before we wrap this one up? All right, public comments. Whoever wants to talk, just stand up and talk loud enough you can record, you give your name and where you're from. We'll start over here.
Charles Schwartz, Newtown Borough. I just wanted to get the date of the meeting that you're gonna have for the first area. I heard February the 8th, and I heard another date, and I wasn't sure which one was going to come first.
The date I said was February 8th, however, that's not official yet. So I'm gonna float some dates to the board,
Okay.
check their schedules. They just heard that this evening for the first time. They haven't had a chance to check their calendars yet. I will announce the dates at our next board meeting, which is on January 16th.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And they'll go out by listserv and they'll be advertised.
Okay, very good.
They'll be fully communicated up on the webpage.
Chris will put some big flyers out about it.
Scott Gorey, Ricetown. So we were talking about for the redistricting and all the decisions we have to make. So I heard we were talking about these 5 meetings and there'll be public comment. Outside of those 5 meetings, what's the plan for public involvement with this process? I'm not really quite clear when you went through that. Are we having, similar to before, we're having committees with the public, or are we just providing input at public meetings? How's this gonna play out?
There won't be formal committees otherwise, but if there are town halls at buildings, then absolutely that's something we'd be looking to have.
Okay, Are you looking for independent input from either individuals or other groups that are in the community? Or?
As always, yeah.
There's a dedicated email address.
There is.
Is there
There is. There's a capital planning at CRSD.org. It goes to me. So if you want, you can just email me directly as well.
Robert's
At our
good at
version.
disseminating to the
All right,
entire
so
board.
you know,
Okay.
less.
Would it make,
Great.
would it make sense if that went to you and Doug and the board, or is that too much communication?
You know, for me, just for what? Not that I would expect to learn. You know what? It winds up being a lot of mail, and then there's like, should we respond to this, should we not respond to this? I would prefer that if it went to Robert and to a smaller group, that they respond to it, and then at the end of the week, they summarize what they've got, and just, here's what I got, here's what I sent out, so that I'm not, because I'm at work during the day, and I'm getting multiple mails on things which I'm looking at, I'm like, do I respond to this, is this, and they can send me direct, if they send it direct to me, I normally respond, but.
Personally, I would like to receive those emails because I believe that when people use those email addresses, they think we are getting it. So I would like to see it, and that's.
Maybe we just need a single point of response.
How do you feel about it, Robert? I mean, would you prefer to, we throw it summarized for us, or have everyone copied?
Whatever the preference of the board is, I'm happy to do.
We have the option of saying that all the emails incoming to these dedicated email addresses will go to all board members, except if that individual board member selects to opt out. So I think that's the route we can go. That's feasible. That's
Can't they
feasible.
go? Matt, can't you post them to, board docs as they come in? So that if we wanted to look, we could look moment by moment in board docs under the capital item. You can't do that?
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, hang on, sure, he hasn't talked yet. So- Okay, sorry, that's fine. Okay, anyone else?
Do you want to speak? Okay.
Like, call someone.
Let's clarify.
Speak or they won't speak.
First of all, I'd like to correct something I said earlier and apologize to this young lady. It was, Council Rock was named after that rock, but it was submitted in a contest, which I never knew. So thank you for bringing us the correct information.
That's what I said.
Second of all, if you're gonna talk about bus rides, you should study what the bus rides are now. They make a report to the state and they average out bus rides. Citizens for Education did a big, long report on this 2 years ago. I think you'd be surprised at how long and how short, some of these rides are, what the averages are. So you can't have an expectation that's any more than, it should be compared to what we're already doing, whatever your expectation is. Second of all, I think you've totally, completely lost your focus by putting Chancellor in for an assessment. And it's going to bring out a crowd of people that you don't need in the mix of the people who don't want their school closed. I have never seen this community come so fully together to save this building as administration building when when this stopped being a school. Republicans who were going to lose money for their township were okay with all that income of EIT going to the borough and donated windows. I mean, it was a totally unselfish respect and love for the history of this building from all quarters of the district. And if you are going to move out of here, you won't be doing it until you vacate the schools. So why do you want to bring this up there when I don't see how it goes into what students go where or what school closes is insanity. And I will help to bring those people here. So I just think, why do you put that now? That's a decision about reuse, not a decision about, we're not going to put students back in here. It would be as inefficient as Wrightstown is. It's not a decision about where students are gonna go. And reuse doesn't have to come. You have to decide what schools you're gonna close, where the kids are gonna go, and if you bring that into your public discussion right now, God bless you. That's all I gotta say. I agree with you on being televised, thank you very much. I think I'm glad you're reinstating that email address about this. For me, I hardly ever write the board any emails because they don't respond. They don't even say, they never respond. They don't even say, I got your email, thank you for your input. Why should I waste my time going to the board? So, if you say that they're gonna go to the board, that's fine with me, but I think maybe the public should know, if I take the time to write an email, who's it gonna go to and how's it gonna be received? Whatever you decide, that's it. I think that's all I have for tonight. So how will we know that you're going forth with an assessment of chancellor? And this is the first time, and I hope you report that in the paper if they're gonna do that, because the public does not know. And this has been on the table since announced November board meeting, that you were gonna look at closing chancellor, and it hasn't been reported in the paper, so.
No, nobody's looking to close Chancellor Center. You're just.
You only get assessments to sell buildings.
Nancy, we're just looking at who we might use if we were to do those.
Okay, and.
That's the
Chancellor
decision
has-
that's on the table before you start
Okay,
putting
well,
stuff out there that gets.
if you get an assessment of chancellor, you should get somebody who's experienced in school board, and you have to see how many years they've had in school things. And chancellor has some very unique conditions. Was when we sold the playground to the borough, it took care of the impervious pervious. That may not be transferable.
Okay. Any other public comment?
I just have a question. My name's Gus Sullivan, Newtown Crossing. Just more of a point of clarity that the author has comment. The 5 meetings that you talked about, is that mainly to talk about what schools may potentially close? Or are there also going to be redistricting discussions during that time? And if it's not redistricting, does that start in June once the board's decision? I'm just trying to understand what meetings are more relevant for the topic that I'm interested in.
It's a great question. The redistricting process formally won't begin until summertime, really July. So the board vote on school consolidation as well as the repurposing of non-school facilities will be on June 15th. Redistrict. So all these 5 meetings are going to be about those 2 topics. So it'll be about these 5 facilities that Mr. Reinhardt spoke of, as well as any school consolidation. That's what the 5 meetings will be about. And then the redistricting process formally will start in July. That said, as you heard some of the discussion earlier this evening, in order to help us make decisions on any school consolidation, we're going to start talking about what some redistricting would look like through these 5 meetings.
Will there be any, the outside consultant that you bring in to look at the redistricting, will there be any presentation prior to June from their observation, or is it contingent on the potential closing?
I think it's contingent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's too early to say yet.
Okay.
Just how formal that might be. Yeah.
Reservatively, I mean, the
Yeah.
consolidation, you
Yeah.
can't really separate the two.
Yeah, understanding redistricting will help inform and influence the consolidation.
You're gonna want to watch to have an opinion to see how,
Oh, yeah,
you'll
no,
watch the same way we do to be informed about what might be the best thing. You'll have a different lens on it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I'm not
Yeah.
fighting in
Yeah.
the next.
No, I'm just saying, if you're interested in redistricting, it's gonna flow through the whole process.
The one will bleed into the other, it has to.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that we'll be responsive to what we hear from the public, and this process will evolve. I mean, this process is not set in stone. And the way we actually manage these meetings and the topics will evolve.
Right.
You know, we have dates, we have an ad hoc committee, we have a chair, and we'll go from there.
And that's why really for everyone in the room, we have these 5 meetings set up in advance, but we're not going to plan out all 5 meetings in advance. We're going to plan out the first couple meetings get some direction from the board, see how the couple meetings go, get some direction from the community, and then plan the subsequent meetings as we go forward. And I think that's just the way it has to be.
I would suggest to you, whatever the topic is, you see the way this meeting went. I'm just saying, you see the way this meeting went. And we have an agenda, and we, through conversation and dialogue, can stray from the agenda. I would attend as many of those meetings, of those that you possibly could.
Extremely valuable, so yeah, I think they're all.
I'm just saying, so you don't miss something that you want to be part of. We ebb and flow for sure.
Standing room only.
Before I gavel, any more comment? All right, the facilities meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, guys.